Today's hearing is entitled Examining Employee Misconduct at the EPA. It's a topic we have addressed a few times, but it doesn't seem to be getting better, and so we will continue to highlight this as long as it takes, because in my opinion, the EPA is one of the most toxic places in the federal government to work. And if you don't get rid of the toxicity of the employees there at the EPA, we're doing a great disservice to this country. Most of them are good, hard-working, patriotic people. They care, they work hard. But you have some bad apples at the EPA, and they're not being dealt with, and they're not being addressed. And so we're going to look forward to talking about this. The Inspector General has done some good quality work, he and his team. And again, we will continue to do this until we're convinced that the EPA is actually taking care of this problem. Today, the committee is exploring numerous cases of employee misconduct at the EPA. As the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, in addition to the broad responsibility for conducting oversight of the executive branch, we're also the Committee of Jurisdiction for federal employees. And it is our duty to explore the problems in the federal workforce. We've explored misconduct at the EPA before, and like I said, we will continue to do so until we're convinced there's actually been a change. And most notably, this committee examined the extraordinary case of John Beal. John Beal was a senior EPA employee reporting to then EPA Air Office Chief Gina McCarthy, who for years falsely claimed to be a CIA spy. Right under her nose. This went on for a long time. This person ended up going to jail, having to pay, one of the few people is actually held accountable, having to go to jail, paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in restitution. But her supervisor got a promotion. She's now the EPA administrator, and I have serious questions about her ability to actually administrate. When she had a small office, she couldn't do it. Now that she has a large one, these problems continue to persist. Unfortunately, Mr. Beal's fraud is not isolated. The head of EPA's Office of Homeland Security, this is the head of the EPA's Office of Homeland Security, had a lengthy record of sexual harassment but was not properly investigated. EPA's Region 5 was mired in allegations of sexual harassment and retaliation against those who tried to do something about it. Whistleblowers placed blame for Region 5's toxic culture squarely on former Region 5 Administrator Susan Hedman, who resigned under duress in the wake of the Flint water crisis. Remarking on this situation, an EPA union representative testified, quote, "There is a serious lack of accountability or transparency at EPA when a manager is the problem," end quote. These incidents represent a systemic cultural problem and failure at the EPA. Recently, the EPA Inspector General's office released details on investigations of more than 60 cases of misconduct closed in the last several months. Many of these cases contain disturbing details, and I recognize this is C-SPAN and it's an early hour, but parents, be forewarned, this is not a subject for young kids at any hour, but nevertheless, we need to expose it in order to solve it. In one case, a convicted child molester, was on EPA's payroll for years, even after the EPA learned of this offense. What's so terrible about this situation and just can't not explain or justify is the EPA knows that this person is a convicted child molester, and yet the EPA put him in a position to interact with the public. He was out there literally interacting with the public. This person was found to have police sirens placed on their personal vehicle, on their personal car, lights and sirens, handcuffs, counterfeit badge. It wasn't until a probation violation that it actually got highlighted and dealt with. In another case, an EPA employee was found to have stolen and pawned thousands of dollars of office equipment, yet was not fired. She admitted taking 7 times equipment in the office and taking it to a pawn shop, putting it in her pocket, and she's not fired. Mr. Myberg actually oversaw this person, not directly, but was in his team, and it's just unbelievable this person was not fired. After her felony theft conviction, she is still employed at the EPA to this day. We got a lot of good, hard-working people who want and need jobs, who will serve this country honorably. Why in the world should somebody convicted of stealing from work, a felony conviction, still enjoy the employment and being paid by the United States taxpayers? We have pages and pages of similar cases, and one has to wonder if the EPA's culture and lack of accountability is a contributing factor to tragedies like the Gold King mine spill or the Flint drinking water crisis. The status quo cannot continue, and the committee will continue to investigate the EPA until cultural changes and managers' employees are held accountable for their failures. People are going to make mistakes. We understand that. These are not mistakes. These are patterns of misbehavior that are unacceptable. I introduced a piece of legislation, H.R. 4360, which actually passed this committee and passed the House, the Official Personnel File Enhancement Act, which requires a federal agency to record any adverse findings from resolved investigations into a separated employee's official personnel file. I hope this helps so that these employees cannot just toggle from one agency to the other without having their information shared with others. The bill prevents an employee facing disciplinary action from simply jumping ship to another agency that would not be aware of their negative disciplinary record. We have another case here where there were devices and air cards that were used excessively. In one case, a person in one trip, I don't know how you do this, but in one trip spent $18,000 on one air card traveling, and no restitution, no paying back the government. We have the devices, we have this $4,500 in personal international calls while on leave. And what was the punishment for that? $4,500. Taxpayers got to pay that. What was the punishment? Counseling. Counseling was the punishment. So we got a lot to talk about. The Inspector General has done a good job on this, and I look forward to a good, fruitful hearing. And with that, we'll now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Cummings.